Hi there, James Arter here. Do you have a universal audio interface? Do you use it to track vocals? If so, I'm going to take you through the plugins and a method that I use to record better vocals. Let's check it out. Now, there are two schools of thought when it comes to tracking vocals. The first way is to record with no processing whatsoever, which is a good way of doing it, and that's how I used to do it. But now I actually do it with processing, so I record with EQ and compression. The benefits from this is that it sounds better right away. So as soon as you play the take back to the performer, they're going to be a little bit more pleased with what they're hearing, which is great. The second thing is it feels better for the performer when they're actually singing. So you're going to achieve a better take right away. Let's have a look at the setup that I'm using. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, you're going to need a universal audio interface because we use the plugins and the mixer to achieve these results. I'll take you through one by one to show you which plugins I use and in which order. Okay, so as you can see, I've got a few plugins inserted on the channel. So we're going to look at this second channel here, channel 2. Firstly, I start with Universal Audio Precision Channel Strip. Now, all this is really doing is doing a little bit of EQing. Specifically, it's doing a little bit of subtractive EQ. So I'm rolling off a little bit of the low end. So we've got a higher pass, which is going up to around 100 Hertz. This is specifically 113, but you can play around with that. And the next one is something around the mid-range. So on my one, I'm taking just over 1 dB out at around 700 Hertz, but that will depend on the vocal. So if you've got a higher or lower voice, male or female, you're just going to take just a little bit of that out. It's just taking out a little bit of the mud. The next part is on the high mid. So we're going around 2K, but it can go anywhere between 1 and 2.5K maybe. Again, just taking just a little bit out there. Around 2 dB, nothing drastic, but it's just a little bit just to clean up that vocal a little bit more. Once we've taken a little bit of the mud out, then we can do a little bit of compression. So my choice is to use a Teletronics LA2A. Now, if you've all the plugins that I'm using here, pretty much you'll get for free if you have a UAD interface. So you can do this without having to buy any more plugins, apart from one at the end, but we'll get to that. Okay, so this one is just doing a little bit of compression. It's going to be, you need to set it up with your vocalist and the song. So it will do a maximum of 1 to 2 dB of gain reduction. So it's not very much, it's just a small amount. This is an opto compressor, so it's relatively slow. So all it's doing is smoothing out some of the transients a little bit before it goes into the next insert. So next up is some EQ, this time additive EQ. So I'm using the Pultec EQP1A. Now the thing about this plugin, the thing about this unit is lots of people talk about the fact that even if it's not boosting or cutting anything, you just insert it and it has a little bit of a sound. It instantly adds a little bit of character. Now what I'm doing on here is I'm just boosting a little bit of the highs, a little bit of the lows. So the lows around 100 Hertz and highs around 5K, both at a broad bandwidth. Also, the fact that this is a Valve plugin, well, a Valve unit turned into a plugin, means that you're getting a little bit of saturation, a little bit of color to start off with, and that's always really pleasing on vocals. Now, last but not least is the 1176. Now, this compressor will be doing most of the heavy lifting on your vocal. I will tend to compress at somewhere between 4 and 6 dB, but it can be more if you need to. It totally depends on the song, especially if it's a very dynamic song. You can get away with doing that little bit more. In terms of the settings, I'm using a medium fast attack at around 5 on the unit and a pretty fast release at about 7. The ratio I use is 4. Now the reason I'd use 4 instead of 8 is because the difference in sound between the two is actually quite drastic. Both of them add a lot of character. This unit in general adds a lot of character, but the 8 I just found to be just a little bit too much, but that's where you can experiment and see which one you prefer. Also, if you don't have this version of it, so this is a blue stripe and doesn't actually come free, so you'd have to, this is an additional purchase for UAD. Whereas this one here, this is a black version, the black face, But it will do a very, very similar job. It acts in exactly the same sort of way, but it just doesn't have the same level of grit that the Blue Stripe does. So if you can't get your hands on the Blue Stripe, don't worry about it, but it's just preferable. Okay, so let's have a look and see what difference this does actually make. So I've got two vocals here. The first one was completely dry with no processing. The second one was recorded with all the processing. So as you'll notice, there's in this top one, this is a dry version. There's quite a big difference in dynamic range between the first passes and the second. Like at first it's much softer, and then halfway through it gets much louder. Whereas if you look at this bottom one here, this is a wet version, it's a much more consistent level. So that's less work to do afterwards, which is a really good thing, because you know we're all a little bit lazy around here, aren't we? Okay, so let's have a listen, and we'll see what the difference is. So firstly, this is the dry unprocessed version. 2 lines out of focus. Look me in the eye and tell me that I'm not that kind. Right, so quite a big jump there. We'll listen to the processed one. 2 lines out of focus. Look me in the eye and tell me that I'm not that kind. So instantly you can hear that it's just controlled that much more. So when you get that given to you when you're about to do a mix with it, it's already starting to sit that little bit better, and it's much more easier to work with. It doesn't mean that you can't do any further processing in the mix. You will definitely do that, but it just means that you've got something already fantastic to start off with. So now I guess it begs the question, what is each plugin doing? So we can still, if I just start with the dry version, I'll put each one on and you can kind of hear what it's doing. Bear in mind, each plugin is doing a fairly small amount, so it really is the combination of all of them which really makes a difference. So firstly, we've got the precision channel strip, which is just doing a little bit of EQ, which is just a little bit of subtractive EQ. 2 lines out of focus. Okay, we'll go on to the next one because you can probably hear quite a lot from that. Next up is the LA2A, just doing just a little bit of compression. 2 lines out of focus. Look me in the eye and tell me that I'm not that kind. Now you'll notice there, if you saw the gain reduction in that first, in the more quiet part, it wasn't doing anything at all. It wasn't reacting. It wasn't until the loud part where it started to shave off about 2 to 3 dB of gain reduction, which is what you want it to do. You don't need it to be acting all the time. You just need it to be controlling some of the major parts to try and level things out. And then when we go into the next one, so this is a Paul Tech, we'll just pop that on. 2 lines out of focus. Look me in the eye and tell me that I'm not that kind. Let's take it off just so you can see a difference. 2 lines out of focus. Look me in the eye and tell me that I'm not that kind. And we'll just pop it back in so you can hear that, because it's doing, this one's doing a little bit more than the other plugins. 2 lines out of focus. Look me in the eye and tell me that I'm not that kind. So it's just got a little bit of a boost on the lows and a little bit of a boost on the highs as well. And then the last one, and like I said before, this is one which is doing the majority of the work. So this is the 1176. And if you have a look, watch the gain reduction, because you're going to see that it's doing quite a lot here, especially in this song. In fact, maybe I might have gone a little bit more aggressive than I would do on this, but it's partly just to show you exactly what the process is doing. So here it comes. 2 lines out of focus. Look me in the eye and tell me that I'm not that kind. Yeah, so that was actually going up to about 10 dB of gain reduction. Is quite a lot, but you can get away with it with this plugin quite easily. So I quite like it. I might back it off if I was actually committing to that. I might back it off a little bit, but this is the main thing when you're actually setting up to record the vocal. You need to just do at least a pass of the song, just so you can find out exactly what the singer's doing. Is he going to be singing? Is he or she? Are they going to be singing really loud throughout, or is there other really, really soft parts and then really, really loud parts? So you need to factor that in. But the main thing is the combination of all of these parts together. They're all doing a small piece, but they're all doing something which is really, really important and add up to the main result. So we're going to go one more time just so you can hear it with and without the processing. Firstly, this is without. 2 lines out of focus. Look me in the eye and tell me that I'm not that kind. Now let's give it with the processing. All of those engaged. Here it comes. 2 lines out of focus. Look me in the eye and tell me that I'm not that kind. So specifically, you'll notice that on those high parts, it's not jumping out anymore. It's not sounding like you need to turn it down because it's already doing it for you. And then instantly you have something much better to work with right off the bat. So what if you're feeling overcautious and you don't want to commit to those changes in tracking? That's absolutely fine. UAD have a really good feature where you can choose whether to record the processing of the plugins or not. So if you have it over here, if you change it to monitor mode, it means that all of these plugins, all the processing you've got going on will be heard by the performer, so they'll be able to use this to improve their performance, but it means the actual recording of it, the audio itself, will be completely dry. So whether you're using Logic, Pro Tools, whatever, it'll be completely dry and you can apply this processing afterwards. If you want to record with it on, with all the processing, put it into record mode, and then it's going to be tracking exactly what plugins you have on there. So that is destructive. It is the way that I prefer to do it because I think if it sounds good at first, if it's feeling right, it is right. So just go with it. So that's it. That's an example of my vocal chain for tracking. What do you think? Do you use the same sort of thing? Do you not like to commit at all? That's totally fine, but I'm interested to know why. Or if you do choose plugins to commit with, which ones do you do? Do you use the same ones that I do, or do you change it up a little bit? Leave any comments, any likes and everything below. I will check it all out and I will comment back as soon as I can. If you liked the video, do hit that like, do hit subscribe, do hit the notification bell, and it means that you'll get notified of other videos. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.